So today I have the pleasure of introducing to you one of my colleagues, Dr. Darrell Kleinke. I've talked a little bit about Darrell previously already. He is really our systems thinker, our systems engineering, our systems processor, but he's a lot more than that. He's a business person as well with a deep background in manufacturing through his time, in particular at Ford Motor Company, and has been a professor of engineering and has been teaching master level engineers in terms of system thinking for a while. And we're fortunate to have him on our team. So, Daryl, first off, thanks for agreeing to be interviewed and being a part of what we're doing here with education.
I'm happy to do it. I really think this is a noble cause, so glad to be here.
I think that's actually the first time I talked to you about this. That was the word you used, noble. You said,
Well,
you, you,
something needs to be done. We're
you
trying to do
described
something.
you described it as a noble cause. What I'd love to do, because you've obviously been an educator, which is not at the K-12 level, but you've been an educator and you've been in industry. And so I'd love for you to kind of go back to your 4 days and frame in particular the complexities of what was Ford prior to them deciding that quality had to be improved, and then what that transition was. And I'm going to ask this a big conversation, and we can do it in
Yeah.
pieces. But and then where might it apply or be very relevant to education?
So I started in the auto industry 1994. In those days, it's kind of the end of the big three. And I don't want to say the end of it, but the introduction of the imports and particularly Japanese vehicles were coming on strong. And to our dismay, we were getting beat in the quality realm. So Ford made a very concerted effort, an absolute focus on quality. Quality meaning, first of all, get it right the first time. Or if you find something going wrong, you immediately fix it and have that mindset of, I see the issue. In fact, I'm going to stop production, which was a super no-no before those days. Stop production, fix what's going wrong, and then start it up again. One of the phrases I liked in the manufacturing world was, don't make it, don't take it, don't pass it on. So don't make a quality problem. If you do know what's happening, stop it. Don't take it from the stage before you. If you see one coming in, stop it. And for certain, don't let a quality issue leave your station and go to the next. And that was on the assembly line, but that also became the mantra in product development as well, right? Don't let quality problems fester. And with that absolute intensity, Ford regained number one position in quality. And I look at the education field, and as you mentioned, Darzwan, I worked in the college level, so freshman through senior, but same kind of idea, right? Don't send a group of students or a single student through to the next level. But in academia, that happens all the time, right? We have a problem where maybe we're not training the student right, but we pass it on to the next level and they just matriculate through the system, which I think is a problem in the academic world, which is parallel to the quality issue we had back at Ford as well. So there's lots of parallels. I also think another parallel here is when you think about the assembly line, here in Detroit, it's like the goal is, produce as many vehicles as possible. And pre-quality days, it was pump those vehicles out. Even if you had a quality defect, we'd fix it later. Just keep that line rolling. Whatever it took, volume mattered, not quality. And again, that got us in trouble and led to quality issues. And I see the same thing in academia, right? Just move the kids along and have them come out the end of the assembly line. And you think of K-12 education, that really is operating like an assembly line, just moving the students through and out they go. So I see so many parallels here. And the thing that changed the auto industry, some folks who've been around as long as I have, but you remember a gentleman by the name of Deming, who was kind of pushed out of the U.S. auto industry, went to Japan and really emphasized quality measures there. And that's what really drove the Toyotas of the world to come up and improving quality. So these principles have been around, and in the U.S. auto industry, we just didn't listen to them till it was a desperate time.
Mm.
And these quality principles, I believe, are around education as well, but we have yet to listen to them, in my view. So the parallels between industry, automotive, and academia, I see it all the time. And I think there's a lot that could be learned in academia by looking at how the auto industry addressed their problems. So,
And so one of the things that is a real aha moment for me and for Dorothea is the way that we go about approaching problems.
mhm,
And it's really human nature, I suspect, to think about things in a sequence, in a linear fashion. And we see in education, and maybe you can even offer some examples in manufacturing, where you zero in on something like we've got to improve low test scores. So
yeah,
the focal point is we're going to improve low test scores. But when you focus on that one area, there are so many other
mm,
problems that
right.
impact that one that you need to appreciate why you need to move them in unison versus sequentially. So help people to understand why linear doesn't work and why using a systematic approach to solving problems is going to be more effective.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's come on strong in the auto industry is this idea of systems and systems of systems, if you will. And thinking about that, you hit the nail on the head there, Darrell. So if you're thinking about linear, you're going to fix one point, one issue. Meanwhile, there's a whole cloud of other things happening around it. You'll actually find we use the word robust, which means a system that just keeps producing the same results no matter what happens. You'll find that systems, and especially bad systems, are quite robust. You can try and fix something, you fix it, and guess what? After a little while, it's going to continue to operate in its poor fashion. So the goal is to, and this might sound a little crazy, it's like you try to fix everything at once, right? I can't just do a great job in one area and let everything else go crazy. So you try to do a little bit everywhere. And the thing that changes when you start approaching problems from a system perspective is you realize it's really the interface between subsystems is where you're going to find most of these occurring. You know, within the teacher group, you might have things going just fine. Within the building maintenance group, you might have things going just fine. But when teachers and the maintenance department have to cross paths, it's that interface. And if you start thinking about all the different organizations and sub-organizations, and then you start thinking about mapping those interfaces of one to another, it becomes a very complex spider web, if you will, of complex interconnections of systems. And so when you start to approach it from I'll say a holistic point of view, and sometimes we throw around the word culture, you really need to establish a culture that's consistent throughout the system. Everyone starts to pull in the same direction, or at least have the same objectives. With that system kind of thinking, you slowly but surely start to move in the right direction, as opposed to a linear fix one area that's just going to fall back into its same old mode in a very short period of time. So,
I think we have great examples. Dorothea spent a lot of time talking about having been successful in improving the performance in low performing schools. Her
mhm.
engagement will end. The schools will be significantly improved, but a few years later, they have returned
Yep.
to their former poor performance. And
Yes.
because it's a very robust system of poor performance, and it's a cultural question.
Yeah.
I'm mindful of a couple of stories she tells. One story of a janitor that had a work order to come in and fix a sink or something in a classroom and decided that because he had this work order, he was going to attempt to fix it in the middle of class. So,
Right.
so he culturally,
Yeah.
his objective was to do his job. It was not tied to student and teacher success. His objective was misaligned with why the school existed. It's a perfect example. And there are these examples across the board. You know, and what's interesting, and I want to come back and go back into Ford for a second. And well, let me ask you first off, we haven't used the term, but this complexity, it has a specific term that I want you to introduce. in terms of complex problems like this?
Oh, yeah, we call these they're known as wicked problems, which means it's a problem that, first of all, doesn't want to get solved. It may be impossible to solve. In fact, I don't even like to use the word solve because once you've got it something working, a wicked problem will return and unsolve itself, and things change all around it. So if you can embrace the fact that you're dealing with a wicked problem that doesn't want to be solved and will not stay solved, it means you've always got to be on your toes, right? Even when I got my system working, this would be a non-robust system. My system starts to work, but the wicked problem, something changes outside my system, something changes inside my system, and it wants to break again. So these are very difficult problems. In fact, that's why I kind of stay away from the word solved, because
Right.
face it, you can't solve it. You can just tamp it down and keep it under control as best you can, but you've got to always be on your guard because it changes all the time.
And if I were to apply that into a school environment, the students that you get every year are going to be different. So
Yep.
whatever worked with the last group of students is not necessarily going to work with this group of students. You've got teachers that are going to move and shuffle. So
Yep.
that's going to be a variable that you can't necessarily anticipate. You've got financial pressures that may come into the system. You may have a change in superintendent, a change in school board. You have all of these elements, the economy, that keep
Yep.
you off balance. And so one of the analogies we draw in our presentations is you want to have the root system of like a 700-year-old sequoia, because you've got to be able to withstand the winds and the forces that are going to want to get you away from what your key purpose in, which has got to be the success of the teacher and the student.